both fiscal and monetary policy in Europe is more tight than it is in the United States, for example. Now, when I say there are good policies for the northern countries but not the southern, I mean, those of you who are more technically minded, they might have heard about what's known as the Taylor rule, which is a rule that economist John Taylor at Stanford has devised to evaluate monetary policies. Well, if you use his criteria for evaluating the policies and you use the fundamentals of Germany, for example, you come up that what the ECB, the European Central Bank, is doing now is the right policy. But if you use the fundamentals of Italy or Spain or Greece to work out what policy the European Central Bank should be following, then that's the wrong policy. You need to follow a much more inflationary policy for those countries. For example, you need to have much more comprehensive QE programs like the ones that the Federal Reserve has than what we're having now. Well, Europe as a whole, the single market, if you like, is China's biggest trading partner. But the prospects for 2014 are not good. But the numbers, though, whether they're positive or not, is that they're tiny. We're talking about 0.1%, 0.2%. So it's not really a recovery. It's sort of stationarity, basically, on average. And there's no doubt that Europe will be the worst performing region in the world in 2014. That the federal government, the central government, rather, I should say, in Beijing is faced with many regional governments that have these big debts, and at the time, as of now, they are prepared to rescue those without any conditions. But what we have effectively in this situation, because they can use the appointments in the local banks and the TICs, is that what the regional governments perceive is that they have soft budget constraints, which they can break. So alongside with the debts now, there are non-performing loans at the local banks. I think I saw one estimate of the World Bank that's something like 30 to 35% of loans in regional banks are non-performing. And as in the Eurozone, this could lead to exclusion from markets, and they could put at risk local depositors unless the center, meaning the central government, is prepared to make large transfers and commits to making these large transfers, which is not what happened in Europe. Now in China, the problem is potentially worse because of the one-child policy that restricts the birth rates. So now what are the implications of aging other than pensions, which I'll mention in a minute? Well, the most important that I mentioned is that public pension provision becomes too expensive. Now there are other implications, though, that you can reduce or eliminate if you extend retirement ages. Older people, for example, have more claims on welfare services, especially the care services. So if the state provides these welfare services, hospitalization, caring and all that, the taxation needs to be higher in an aging society. Then an economy that has an aging population is one that will not grow as well as one that has a young population. So what's the policy response? Well, retirement ages need to be extended, and they should be tied to life expectancy. We should have a policy, and China should have one, in fact, now, which it doesn't have, that says, okay, I'm going to fix the retirement age once every 10 years on the basis of life expectancy. That you'll be retired for an average of 10 years, for example, we would say. If life expectancy is 80, then you should work until 70.